So it's indeed been 10 years since I went public with my story of having been abused in an organized network of pedophiles that also did other horrendous things, all under the name of Satanism. So I was sold by my mother as a little girl. I was just 6. It was around my 6th birthday. I'd been abused from the start, and I believe my mother was targeted by the people in the network when we moved to this new town when she was married. And I was first taken in by pimps who had infiltrated in our family and had taken me on outings, and finally they took me. Although I'd been abused before and I had also been raped by the pimp, there was really nothing that could have prepared me for that first night that I was taken into the network. It was a costumed ball in a castle in Belgium, where I'm from. And I was used on a stage in an extremely sick S&M ritual where I was humiliated beyond belief with a dog collar. And I was left there afterwards. I was naked and I was left there, and the people around me, it was a masked ball, I said. Well, they were dressed like hippies, so it was extremely confusing because we were in a castle. But everyone was high, but there were waiters with silver trays dressed in black and white offering these drugs to people. So it was a high class a place with standing, but the people there were dressed as hippies as a masquerade and doing lots of drugs. And people were so high, they really barely noticed what was happening to me on that stage. Though the adult that was there actually defecated on the stage, and that was the only time someone seemed to notice something, slightly disgusted. Something happened to me there that when I was lying on the stage at 6 years old, I knew that if I don't do something now, I'm going to die inside. And as I had this inner sense of, no, I can't let this happen, I stood up and I felt righted by a force that I can only explain as divine. And I told the people there off. And I told them they'd all go to jail. That it was wrong what they were doing. Well, the result of that was that I was threatened extremely graphically, and I was used in this network for 5 more years. The first 3 years, I was used as a throwaway child. My mother did not belong to the network, so anything could be done with me, and several times I was in situations where in Belgium, some of the nobles are extremely sadistic, and they could just do whatever they wanted with the children, and did. And there were situations where the fact that I survived was just an accident, and other children didn't. Or I was used in this network, which was sort of a mafia that used the children, the pedophilia, really as blackmail. So I was used as a young child for people that were getting into the network, were climbing in this role of power in either the Belgian government or in some role in the justice system, or so everyone got paid off by being part of this, and being part of this meant that you needed to be blackmailed, and the main tool for blackmail was the children. And in that context, with my eyes open and seeing that they were wrong, I was always shocked that these men didn't stop themselves once they were alone with me. And there were many, and none of them ever stopped. None of them ever said, oh my God, this is a little child, I can't do this. And at age 9, the Belgians were not satanic. The boss of the Belgian network was the then Minister of National Defense, and he was Prime Minister of Belgium twice. He had started out as a butcher, and he secretly remained a butcher. Paul van den Boeinans was his name, and he was not satanic himself. He was not what I call sincere Satanist, but he did want to please those Satanists that were more powerful than him. So when I was 9 years old, in 1972, the Bilderberg meeting happened in Belgium. And the network, of course, was catering to those members that were attending. And in honor of one of these members, a satanic ritual was organized. 2 children were given. One to be raped and one to be killed. The other child was a little friend of mine of whom I felt extremely protective. I tried to hold him. He was ripped out of my arms. I offered my own life instead of his. I pleaded for him. And my pleas were met with beyond condescension. It was like I was a dirty fly. Nothing more. An experience occurred there after my little friend was butchered that left me beyond all beyond all reason. I connected to this perpetrator, this monster who was responsible for all of this international networker. He took a liking to me and then decided he was going to make me into his personal slave. His personal slave for the elite, for the most powerful men in the world, trained in mind control to accomplish that. And he was going to create a platform for me that I was going to be famous in France as a singer and actress. And then that platform then would allow me also to connect with the most powerful men in the world. I would be able to seduce them and spy on them at the same time. So I was sent to Germany. The German doctor that was in charge of the mind control there was Hans Harmsen. He was a Nazi. He also was into eugenics. He was studying eugenics. And he also was the head of the Pro Familia, which is the German counterpart to Planned Parenthood. I was mind control trained, and I have to tell you that after a month being there in Germany, in Heidelberg, I did not know anymore that having sex with men that they were wrong. The mind control training is so powerful. It just goes straight through your conscious mind and uses your survival instinct and guides it so that you do things automatically from the dissociated place. You do things automatically. You do not know what you do. And you have a front personality who knows nothing. But I know that when I was sexual with men, I had no idea that it was wrong anymore. I lost it. However, being in the club, so to speak, was coming with a price, a very big price. On the one hand, I was treated as a star. And I can tell you that is a very big difference from being treated the way I was before, as a throwaway child. So I was tempted. It was tempting to be part of this group and be treated nicely versus being treated like less than nothing. However, what I had to do, even in the most dissociated, drugged states that I was in, I never wanted it. So after 1 year, where I was both trained as well as already used and sold to powerful men and famous politicians. I saw celebrities from the United States, everywhere, the UK. I saw people that in 1972 and 1973 were very well known, very famous. And in 1973, I had enough. I rebelled against my owner and was punished severely, kicked out in the most brutal possible way, thrown in a cage, and reprogrammed, tortured in a dungeon and reprogrammed to make sure I would never become successful. And so most of my life I lived under that blanket of that reprogrammation, which was meant to humiliate me and make me feel that I was worthless and that I could never be successful. And I lived a very small life for most of my life, but I didn't feel that I could be me. So when I started to heal in the 80s, I had a memory, and I felt I was suddenly coming in contact with something real. And that was the beginning of the healing journey. So my book is about the last year I spent in the network after I was kicked out of the seat of power, you can say, and I was back in the Belgian network, and it is about the relationship with a gangster who was just being introduced to the network, who became one of my main abusers, and then ended up having a change of heart last minute and made a deal to get me out of the network. So at age 11, I was completely out. And it's very unusual to have been sort of used in that way with the top elites, let's say, with the most powerful people in the world, and to be used there in that circle, and then to end up completely free just a few years later. So I've used my time, well, to survive first and to deal with all the mental health issues I had. Then I went to therapy, I started healing, and my life has been in the context of healing since then, and truth. And yes, I started speaking out 10 years ago, very much by accident. I was already in the prisons, and I was doing an interview about that, and it was just one time when I said, I'm not answering this, that's all. So I answered it, and that journalist decided to make that the article, of course. And that's how it started, and eventually I was asked, and it was in the beginning much more about speaking about sex trafficking, being careful. I talked about the Belgian nobles, but I was very careful. And so little by little, we have really come a long way in 10 years. I have to say that I always expect that no one is going to listen and no one's going to want to know, and that because that was my life. No one really wanted to know. There was no way I could even imagine speaking to people in the 70s. The thickness of it was just completely impossible. And it was said inside the network that that's exactly what they would expect, that no one would believe me, aside from the threats. So what has happened in the 10 years that I've been public is nothing short of a miracle. And with people like Jeanette and other survivors that you're going to hear from today, I think that more and more these truths can be absorbed, and this truth can finally be known by the majority of people.
Is my unbreakable dedication to end the horrific suffering of all the babies and the children that are still enduring these ongoing atrocities and crimes against humanity. This hasn't stopped. It's still going on. And that's why I do what I do. That's why I put myself on the front line. And that's why I keep going. Because until every single child and baby on this planet is safe, we must not stop. We must go on.